How does BlackRock utilize the ESG score system to control domestic policies while benefiting from their special treatment in China? And does the US suffer while China benefits from this vampiric relationship? We discuss this with Will Hild from Consumers Research. I then discussed the just concluded Shangri-La Security Summit, where China's Minister of Defense calls itself a peaceful country but threatens war over Taiwan. Which one is it, war or peace? Plus, a new Freedom of Information Act document reveals Chinese drones from civilian ships that could be dangerous yet disguised. This dates back to 2019. I got the details for you. Welcome to China Insider, I'm David Zhang. There's an idea floating around. Wall Street might want to impose something called a social credit system for the mass here in America. They already have one in China, but here, corporations are taking the lead and they're already restricted by what is called the ESG score, environmental, social, and governance. But what exactly does it do? Heck, if it does its thing, if we're talking about the environment, why did they kick Elon Musk's Tesla off the system? For being too environmental friendly? I doubt it. So I thought electric vehicles, since that's the best thing for the environment, ESG supposedly will rate how well or how friendly one company is to the consumers, therefore it has nothing to do with politics, right? Well, I was wrong. Looking for the E, S, and G categories, one company that takes ESG very seriously is actually BlackRock. Well, of course, they manage something like $10 trillion in asset. And BlackRock also happens to be the only investor with special access in China. Now, what exactly does BlackRock do in China, and what does it do with ESG here in the United States, and what do those things have in common? And how exactly does inflation play into your money being spent elsewhere by BlackRock, and does BlackRock prefer one side of the Pacific Ocean over the other? Now, these are interesting questions, and I have the perfect guest today. Joining me today to talk about the fun around ESG and BlackRock is Will Hild, the Executive Director of Consumers Research, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing the knowledge and understanding of issues, policies, products, and services of concern to consumers, and to promote the freedom to act on that knowledge and understanding. Will Hild, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So tell us, we had a conversation. I just want to kind of recap for the audience. It was about BlackRock, what they're doing in China. And I want to first start with what they're doing in the United States in terms of creating the environment that could benefit China.
Absolutely. Well, BlackRock has been the leader, and in some ways the ringleader of all of Wall Street, in pushing something called ESG investing. And your audience has probably heard that term before. But really, what ESG is an excuse for Wall Street to push politics into corporate America. They can push in their own environmental policies, they can push in social and governance policies that could never be achieved at the ballot box. But BlackRock uses the nearly $10 trillion of assets they have under management. That's not their money, it's state, local, federal pension funds and other institutional money to push politics into corporate America. And the big thing they push is climate change policy, or what they call net zero.
When you speak about pushing it, so those pension funds, right? Where are they investing the pension funds to?
That's a great question. So it's a mix. They invest a good portion of those pension funds in American domestic companies here, like I'll speak about this later, but Exxon, for example. And here they use the control of those shares to fiddle with their control, with their politics. They push the companies in certain directions. But they also invest overseas. In fact, Larry Fink has gone on record saying he thinks his clients should triple their investments in China specifically. So they are taking some of that money and putting it overseas, hundreds of billions of dollars invested in companies, that some of which are owned or co-owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And then they spend a lot of it here in the United States buying up shares of companies here. But they treat those companies completely differently. And I can go into that if you'd like.
So ESG is a way for them to implement certain policies in control here in the United States.
Exactly.
Is there a double standard when it comes to China?
100%. So here domestically, they use ESG metrics to push companies like Exxon to get out of the business of focusing on delivering cheap, reliable energy for their customers, gasoline for the American consumer. They have voted on boards of directors that have explicitly said they're trying to get Exxon out of that business and onto so-called renewable energies that have all kinds of problems. But biggest is that it costs American consumers a ton more. But it's a very different story overseas in China. Ironically, BlackRock controls about the same amount of shares, about 7.5% of PetroChina as they do Exxon. But they don't engage in any of the same behavior when it comes to that company. They don't push, for net zero policies. They don't, fiddle with the board of directors. I think if they did, Larry Fink would find himself not welcome in mainland China very quickly, because we know how that government acts. And the excuse that they use, it's so absurd. The excuse that they use is that China is still a developing economy. And so we can't force the same rules on them that he's forcing on domestic producers of energy and other products. It's not just energy, it's extraction, agriculture. Like, for example, they're very hard on the cattle industry because of the methane from the cows. But they won't do any of that in the companies that they own in China. And so they are putting corporate America on an unlevel playing field here in the United States against their rivals in China. And they're using American investment dollars to do that.
So from my understanding of this is they take the $10 trillion asset, they're able to use the financial power to play with both the US government and the Chinese government, but in various different degrees and aspects.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. It's really the same game they're playing in both countries. It's to suck up to elites, to government power in return for special favors, increased contracts. For example, here in the United States, BlackRock got the exclusive contract to buy corporate bonds on behalf of the Federal Reserve. During COVID, the Federal Reserve decided they wanted to intervene in the corporate bond market. BlackRock got that contract. In mainland China, they cater to the CCP in a completely different way, but the goal is the same. It's to get special favors, and it's worked. BlackRock has the right, I believe they're the only company that has the right to operate a foreign-owned mutual fund in mainland China. And more recently, ironically, given what they're doing here, they were given the right to start managing pension fund assets in China. And again, this is very uncommon for a foreign company. And so I think it shows the quid pro quo that Larry has worked by funneling so much investment dollars into China.
From the perspective of Larry Fink, you're playing to the Chinese government. What are you getting from them that could benefit his domestic U.S. businesses and vice versa?
Well, he's not getting really anything that would help the domestic businesses he's invested in here in the United States, but it's stuff that helps BlackRock itself. So in many ways, he's selling out the interests of American consumers and American companies here in the United States in return for personal favors for BlackRock in mainland China. Like I said, he's gotten the right to operate the only wholly foreign-owned mutual fund in mainland China.
Which is rare. Yeah.
Which is, totally rare. And he's gotten the right to manage pension funds in mainland China, which foreigners are not normally allowed to do.